why is housing deregulation a benefit to society? How can we make people understand? A, explain the benefit. B, how can we make them understand?
Of course, there's an enormous amount of housing regulation with so many different kinds. We could go on all day.
Yeah.
The main stuff I'm talking about is the prevention of construction, regulations that make it hard to build stuff. What's going on there? It's one of the easiest applications of economics. It just says that when you make it hard to build stuff, supply is lower and then prices are higher.
Right.
All right, pretty obvious. What motivated me to do the book is just reading a lot of research saying, look, this effect is enormous. It's not just that regulation is raising prices by 2 or 3%. Right. In the U.S. on average, it's probably more like 100%. And in a place like New York City, you may be right. Maybe it is like the regulations raising prices by 400%. Therefore, if you want to make housing affordable, all you really need to do is start tearing down the regulations, take a flamethrower to these rules so that people can build stuff. Notice that's totally different from rent control, which is all a separate issue. Because, like with rent control, they're basically saying we need government to go and keep the prices low. On the other hand, with the prevention of construction, those people you're talking about are saying we need to keep prices high. It's like, well, government's got to do something. I don't know. Keep the prices low, keep the prices high. Anyway, my book is fully on the side of prices should be low, but not by saying you can't charge a high price, because that doesn't actually create houses. In fact, it reduces the number of houses that are available because people don't want to build when they can't get a good price. They don't want to rent when they can't get a price. But in any case, the heart of the book is going over all the regulations that are strangling housing supply so that we can produce a lot more and prices can be cheap. Out of those two groups, I'll say the rent control people, they are just in deep denial, or just not having any understanding of basic econ and how rent control, what does it do? It increases the amount people want to buy while reducing the amount people want to sell, leading to shortages. It is not a solution to lack of housing. It allows a few people to get lucky and to get in a below market place, but at the expense of discouraging construction and just creating a ton of waste. Now, there's other people who think that if we deregulate, the prices will go down. They are correct. That's the whole point. I would add, though, that part of what I do in the book is look at public opinion and housing regulation. It is not true that homeowners are the main people that are supporting regulation. They're supporting it especially. Rather, it's just humans, owners, tenants, almost everyone supports housing regulation. And it's not because they actually like the idea of keeping prices high. Rather, it is because, first of all, they're just so economically illiterate, they deny there's any connection between supply and price. Right. It's like, I don't see why letting homeowners build more would reduce prices. Why would they be nice? Like, that's the point. They're not being nice. It is what you need to do to fill your units if you build a lot more is cut price. Right. So there's that. And then you're just having paranoid stories about all the horrible things that will happen if you don't have the regulation. Normally they're correct. There's going to be a bunch of problems. Yeah, it's true. If you let people build more skyscrapers, then some people lose their views and there'll be more shadows cast. What I say in the book is once we really step back, these complaints are quite petty and we should just ignore them. Not deny them, ignore them and say, yes, you're totally right. And we're not going to lift a finger about this, nor should we, because it's much more important to go and let people build a lot more housing and get prices down. And these complaints are really just a distraction from the big issue. Furthermore, since you are in the New York area, you'll appreciate this. An argument that I rely upon heavily in this book, honestly, it's one that I rely upon heavily in life in general. It's this. All right, you go to New York and people complain, right? I assume you've heard complaining New Yorkers.
Hey, listen, there's a point of pride to be a complainer.
Yes, and they complain about their own city where they've chosen to live.
Right.
And there's traffic, there's parking, there's noise, there's this, there's that. And yet they stay there paying much higher prices than they would pay if they were to go someplace else. Correct. Actions speak louder than words. They say there's one clear implication of all this, which is there must be some unspoken positives that are so awesome that they more than outweigh those negatives so much that you want to pay piles of money to stay where you are.
Right.
That's what housing regulation misses, is all of the good things that you have from having other people around you. The effect on number of restaurants you've got, cultural opportunities, social opportunities, job opportunities, all of this stuff exists because of the population. Right. Have you ever heard a New Yorker say the city be perfect or not for all the people? Ever heard that one?
I've heard that. I've heard a lot too. I've said a lot worse too.
Yes. All right.
But,
So,
but yeah.
New York City would be perfect not for all the people. Wrong. New York City without the people would not be New York anymore. There'd be the restaurants would all close. There'd be the museums would close. There'd just be nothing to do. The reason why it is the way that you like is because it has all those people who then cause a bunch of problems too. But the very fact you're there paying this high rent shows that it is a net positive for you. And we should stop trying to, in particular, government should stop trying to stop this net positive thing from happening.
Right. And would it doesn't doesn't the regulation also prevent the market from defining these types of neighborhoods, the states that, like, for example, like it's that old joke. If you want to get like 5 acres and a ranch home, for $50,000, you go to Montana or wherever, you go to Idaho.
Sure.
You want to be alone, right? If you want to be amongst the skyscrapers and media centers and things like that, it'll cost you $1 million for a lot less property in New York or Chicago or LA, right? Or whatever, right? So to me, that's a market dynamic that the regulation completely crushes. And that, correct me if I'm wrong, would further lead to this societal discord that you see, right? Like where people are like, I can't afford to live. I'm a middle class person on a salary of $80,000 a year. I can't afford to live in New York City. I can't afford to live in New York City if I have 5 roommates. Yeah.
Completely crushes is, of course, exaggerated. It does mean that you've got to make hard trade-offs. So, the main thing the government does is it crushes some of the options. The option to just live by yourself in the middle of nowhere, that one is quite well protected. The market's doing fine there. On the other hand, the option to have a cheap, spacious place in a desirable location, that trifecta is something that government basically has prevented from existing. I mean, to varying degrees. In Texas, it's a lot easier to get something like that, for example, but still nothing near what we're capable of doing. And again, as to why government is crushing this, it's based upon the self-righteous sense that we're doing good. And I say, they're just mistaken. Now, there's also this idea of, it's just the natural scarcity. You can't have too many more people living in New York City. It's like, let's take a look at Central Park. Is every building next to Central Park a skyscraper? No? Then we can have a lot more people, obviously.
Right.
And we know for a fact that as soon as you get permission to build a skyscraper across the street from Central Park, it gets built. The demand is totally there. The technology is there. You, as a New Yorker, you probably know that the Empire State Building was built in about a year.
Oh yeah, it's one of those marvels,
right? But again, it's not really a marvel. It's just that the 100 years ago we had the technology to do it. We still have the technology. We don't have is all the pieces of paper that are required to break ground.